Story 1. Eyeballs and Whispers. On a particularly quiet night, Dave's doorbell camera sends a notification that jolts him awake. Drowsy and disoriented, he fumbles for his phone and sees a motion alert. The screen reveals something truly unsettling, a single glowing eyeball staring directly into the camera lens. Dave's heart pounds as he tries to make sense of the distorted, blurry figure that accompanies the eye. The man's face is obscured, but his ominous whispers and mumbles are eerily clear.
Shh, don't be out.
Earlier that evening, Dave's dog had been barking incessantly outside, a sound that only added to his unease. Realizing something was wrong, he rushes to the door, only to find the man already there. The figure is mumbling incoherently, shifting restlessly from foot to foot. He rang the doorbell repeatedly, each ringing with an ominous ending. Dave, growing increasingly anxious, used the doorbell speaker to threaten to call the police. This threat seemed to trigger a change in the man's demeanor. He became defensive, claiming that he was simply looking for his lost dog, Fido. His voice was shaky with fear and agitation, but Dave was not convinced. The man's erratic behavior and whispered monologue only added to the tension. As the minutes ticked by, the man's movements became more frantic. He tried the doorknob, then the window, each attempt more desperate than the last. Dave's anxiety turned to fear. He finally called the police, but by the time they arrived, the man had disappeared into the night. Authorities found no trace of him, and Dave was haunted by the memory of a face peering into his home, eyes wide with terrifying intensity. The image of that single eye remained etched in his mind, a chilling reminder of the horror of that night. Story 2. Transparent Figure. It was a cool fall, and Tom was relaxing at home when he noticed something strange on his doorbell camera. A man in a dark hoodie stood by the door, seemingly waiting for something or someone. The air outside was thick with uneasy suspense, but the real horror was revealed when Tom reviewed the footage from that night. As the man lingered by the door, a strange, transparent figure began to drift down the sidewalk. At first, it was barely recognizable, but as it moved closer to the door, its ghostly silhouette became more and more distinct. Tom watched in disbelief as the figure seemed to drift past the man, who reacted as if he had heard something, even though there was no visible source of sound. The figure was humanoid but had no solid form, moving with a strange, deliberate grace. The man seemed oblivious to the ghostly presence, focused solely on his purpose at the door. After a moment, he turned and walked away, leaving Tom with an uneasy feeling. The footage has been replayed many times, but the transparent figure remains a chilling mystery. Is it a benign spirit or something more sinister? The ghostly presence moving so close to Tom's door frightens him. The mysterious nature of the apparition haunts him, making him question the boundaries between the known and the supernatural. Story 3. The Clown Incident. 2016 saw a disturbing trend. Clown sightings ranged from the bizarre to the terrifying. One night, a doorbell camera captured a disturbing scene. A man dressed in a clown costume, wearing bizarre makeup and brandishing a small sword, was hovering around the front door. His erratic movements and the sinister appearance of his costume created a sense of foreboding. In a separate but equally disturbing clip, another clown stood in the distance, staring into the camera with a cold, unblinking gaze. The clown's gaze seemed to pierce through the lens, creating a distinctly creepy atmosphere. After a moment, he turned and walked away, leaving an eerie silence. These incidents may have been part of the infamous clown epidemic of 2016, a period marked by unsettling encounters with individuals dressed as clowns. Whether these clowns are part of a larger, more sinister trend or simply pranksters, their presence is incredibly unsettling for homeowners. The fear of encountering such creepy figures at one's doorstep is a chilling reminder of how easily one's sense of security can be shattered. Story 4. Attempted break-in. On a quiet afternoon, Dave's doorbell camera recorded a suspicious sequence of events. A man in a dark hoodie rang the doorbell, but because Dave was listening to music through his headphones, he didn't hear it. Assuming no one was home, the man left but returned 15 minutes later, this time accompanied by another man in a white hoodie. The two men, fully prepared for their mission, began trying to kick in the door. Their violent attempts echoed throughout the house, and Dave, finally hearing the noise, realized something was very wrong. He yelled through the door, hoping his voice would scare them away. Although his words were incomprehensible, the noise was enough to scare the would-be burglars away. The footage of the attempted break-in was horrifying. The sight of the two men trying to force their way into the house left Dave in shock. He was haunted by the realization of how close they had come to breaking in. The incident left him deeply unsettled, the thought of his home being targeted in such a violent manner weighing on him long after the police had been called and the threat had been dispelled. Story 5. Shirtless man pretends to knock. On a sweltering summer night, the oppressive heat had settled over Lisa's neighborhood, turning the evening into a stifling ordeal. Her home, usually a sanctuary of comfort, felt suffocating. As she tried to relax in her living room, the doorbell camera, a recent addition to enhance security, suddenly buzzed with activity. Curious, Lisa glanced at the monitor, expecting to see a routine delivery or perhaps a visitor. What she saw instead was profoundly unsettling. A shirtless man approached her front door, his skin glistening with sweat under the porch light. His disheveled appearance and anxious demeanor immediately caught Lisa's attention. But what was even more alarming was his behavior. Instead of ringing the doorbell or knocking, the man stood in front of the door, seemingly engaged in a conversation with someone who wasn't there. His words were inaudible from the camera feed, but his gestures and glances toward the streets suggested he was interacting with an unseen presence. Lisa's initial confusion quickly morphed into concern. She could see that the man's eyes frequently darted toward a parked car just out of view of the camera. The vehicle was stationary, its presence almost invisible from where Lisa stood. The man's actions and nervous demeanor painted a picture of distress and coercion. It was clear that he wasn't acting of his own volition. The situation grew more alarming as Lisa observed the shirtless man's increasingly frantic movements. He seemed to be checking the surroundings as though ensuring that the driver of the car could see him. Each time he paused and glanced toward the vehicle, Lisa's anxiety intensified. It was as if the man was being forced into this bizarre charade, pressured to follow some dire instructions from someone waiting just beyond her sight. Lisa's instincts told her that this was no ordinary situation. The man's elaborate pretense, coupled with his fearful glances towards the car, suggested that he was involved in something far more sinister than a simple prank or errand. She began to suspect that the man had been sent to her home under duress, possibly as part of a scheme involving the person in the car. The thought that someone might be orchestrating such a distressing scene from the shadows filled her with dread. After several minutes, the man eventually left, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Lisa, now trembling, reviewed the footage multiple times, trying to piece together the strange encounter. It became clear that the man was searching for someone named Matt, a name she had never heard before. As she delved deeper into the mystery, she realized that Matt didn't live at her address and had no connection to her household. The entire episode left Lisa deeply disturbed. She couldn't shake the feeling that the incident was part of a larger, more disturbing plot, with the mysterious figure in the car playing a central role. The night's events were chilling. The unsettling realization that her front doorstep had been the stage for a troubling, possibly criminal act made her question the safety of her home and the true nature of the encounter. Story 6. Men with Guns. On a crisp September morning, Sandra's life took a terrifying turn. The peace of the early hours was shattered at exactly 4 a.m. when her doorbell camera captured an alarming and unsettling scene. The footage showed a man wearing a bulletproof vest and brandishing an assault rifle, standing menacingly at her front door. Sandra, semi-conscious and disoriented, felt her heart sink as she watched the live broadcast from her bedroom. The man's aggressive demeanor and the imposing gun he carried were enough to send Sandra into a panic. She held her 2 young children close, their frightened faces mirroring her own. The stillness of the early morning was broken only by the distant hum of the city and the pounding of her heart. Sandra's immediate instinct was to protect her children at all costs. She rushed them into the bathroom, locking the door behind them. In a state of utter panic, Sandra grabbed the phone and called 911. Her voice shook as she explained the situation to the dispatcher, giving details about the intruder's appearance and the menacing weapon he carried. She also called her husband, who was out of town on business, his voice a calming presence on the phone amid the chaos. Sandra's anxiety was palpable. She could only hope that help would arrive before the situation escalated. The minutes felt like hours as Sandra and her children huddled in the bathroom. The only sounds they could hear were the muffled cries of her children and the occasional noise from outside, as if the man were trying to break in or simply pacing around the porch. The weight of the situation weighed heavily on Sandra, knowing that every moment of waiting could have dire consequences. The police arrived within 25 minutes, their sirens piercing the oppressive silence of the early morning. Sandra could barely contain her relief as the officers quickly approached her home. The man, still outside and clearly agitated, was quickly subdued and arrested. The sight of the uniformed officers and their imposing presence brought some reassurance, although the horror of the ordeal remained. Later that day, Sandra learned more about the disturbing situation. The man who had invaded their lives was identified as someone with a disturbing background. It turned out that his daughter had recently been at Sandra's house. The young girl had confided in Sandra about her fears about her father, describing him as unpredictable and potentially dangerous. This revelation added an eerie layer to the morning's events, as it became clear that the man's visit was not a random act of violence, but a deeply disturbing confrontation. The man was charged with aggravated assault, and his actions left Sandra and her family deeply frightened and vulnerable. The intrusion was a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of human threats and the fragility of safety. Even as the days passed and the immediate danger passed, Sandra's family continued to struggle with lingering anxiety and doubt. Their once peaceful home had been irrevocably altered by a single horrific encounter, a chilling testament to the unpredictable and often terrifying nature of human behavior. If this horror story gave you chills, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more horror stories. Your support helps us continue to bring you the scariest content. By subscribing, you will join a community of horror enthusiasts and never miss an update on our latest horror videos. Hit the notification bell to be the first to experience our next horror story.